Let's talk about the very architecture of your reality. It turns out your brain has a kind of default setting. It's a belief machine. And to make sense of the world around you, it'll do pretty much anything, even if that means making up connections that just aren't there. And this right here, this is basically the blueprint for how we navigate reality. See, your brain absolutely hates being uncertain, so it's driven to create connections and form beliefs no matter how shaky the evidence is. I mean, it's a powerful survival tool for sure, but man, it has some really strange side effects. So our whole journey into this belief machine, it actually starts in a pretty weird place, with a hungry pigeon in a box. Yeah, you heard me. This classic experiment by the psychologist B.F. Skinner, it basically stumbled upon the root of all superstition. Okay, so this setup was super simple. Skinner put a hungry pigeon in a chamber, and a machine dropped in food pellets every so often. And here's the crucial part. The food was delivered completely at random. It had zero, absolutely nothing to do with what the pigeon was actually doing. But the pigeon's brain, which is just desperate to find a pattern, it just couldn't handle the randomness. So what happened? If it just so happened to be spinning in a circle when the food appeared, its brain connected the dots. An accidental coincidence turned into a rock-solid cause and effect belief. Now, in its mind, to get more food, it had to keep doing its little food dance. And this perfectly explains the term Skinner came up with, superstitious behavior. It's when you create a ritual based on a connection that isn't even real. And you know what? The pigeon wasn't being dumb. Its brain was doing exactly what it's built to do. Find a pattern to try and get some control over its world. Now, it's super easy to laugh at this and think, oh, what a silly pigeon. But here's where things get a little uncomfortable. What happens if you make that box bigger and you swap out the bird seed for, say, dollar bills? Do you think we'd act any differently? Well, to answer that exact question, some researchers built a human-sized Skinner box. They called it the Victory Volt. And the whole point was to see if we, modern, smart humans, would fall into the exact same trap as a bird. The setup was just genius in its simplicity. People went into this room and were told to collect as much cash as they could. But, just like with the pigeon, the reward, which was a dollar bill popping out of an ATM every 30 seconds, was completely automatic. The button, useless. The floor, irrelevant. Whatever they did was completely meaningless. But they didn't just stand there, right? Almost right away, people started making up these super complicated rituals. Let's take one person, Rebecca. She was absolutely convinced she had cracked the code. Her brain cooked up this whole sequence of events that had to happen. Touch these 20 squares, push the button, get paid. And she truly believed she was earning every single one of those dollars. So, there's a fancy psychological term for this: adventitious reinforcement. It is the exact same thing we saw with the pigeon, only now it's happening to us. An accidental link gets created in the brain, and once that belief is there, it is so hard to get rid of. It all comes back to that core idea. We would rather be wrong than feel confused. Okay, so this just blows the doors open to a much bigger question. If it's this easy for us to create these huge, false beliefs just based on our own random actions, what happens when the ideas and suggestions start coming from the outside world? I mean, the reality is we never form our beliefs in a vacuum. We walk into every situation with a whole bunch of assumptions and expectations already loaded up. We're just so vulnerable to all the little cues from our environment, from the people around us, and they can totally shape what we believe without us even noticing. You can almost think of it like a social emotional contagion. We just sort of soak up the feelings, the expectations, the beliefs of whatever room we're in. That belief machine in our head, it's not just looking for patterns in what we do, it's looking for them absolutely everywhere. And this can be manipulated with, frankly, staggering power. Check this out. In one experiment, they put people next to a totally fake, turned-off MRI machine. But because someone in a lab coat, a huge symbol of authority, right, told them they were gonna feel neural activation, they actually did. They reported feeling real, physical tingling sensations. The power of suggestion became a biological reality for them. So why? Why are we so easily led? Why do we just give in to these outside structures? Well, because the alternative is absolutely terrifying. To just exist in pure confusion with no pattern or belief to grab onto, that feels completely powerless. So our brain just latches on to the first framework it can find. And this, of course, leads us to the biggest, most mind-bending question of them all. If our rituals are just accidents and our feelings are just suggestions, then where's the real you in all of this? What part of that is actually truly you? To even try to answer that, we've got to go deeper than just psychology. We have to ask a philosophical question from a field called ontology, which is just the study of being. The question is, what does it even mean for a self to exist in the first place? There's this really wild theory in that field called mereological nihilism. And it basically says that objects with parts, think about it, a chair, a table, even a human body, they don't really exist as one single thing. The theory argues that the only things that are truly real are the fundamental building blocks, the indivisible particles that philosophers call simples. So from this point of view, a person isn't a solid thing, it's just particles arranged in a human-like way. So if you look at it that way, you are not a solid, persistent thing that's traveling through time. You're much more like a wave in the ocean. You're a temporary pattern, a kind of disturbance that is hosted by matter for a while, and then it just disappears. The you is the pattern itself, not the physical stuff. Okay, so if we're just a temporary pattern, what does that even mean for us? Well, the philosopher Alan Watts had this really beautiful, kind of cosmic way of thinking about this whole thing. Watts said, look, we get our language all wrong. We say things like, I came into this world, as if we're some kind of separate visitor. But he argued that the universe isn't just a big box that holds people. The universe peoples. Think about it. An apple tree apples, right? In that same way, the entire universe is peopling. We're not nouns, we're verbs. We're an action the universe is doing. And that brings us right back to the beginning. Maybe this relentless, unstoppable drive we have to find patterns and make beliefs, maybe it's not a bug. Maybe it's a feature. Maybe it's our whole purpose. We are the universe becoming aware of itself. And our amazing belief machine is just the tool it's using to write its own story, to find some kind of meaning in all the chaos. So here's the bottom line. Your brain is a pattern-seeking machine. You can't turn that off. But now that you know how that machine works, you have a totally new kind of power. It leaves you with one single, incredibly important choice. What patterns are you going to choose to see?